I can't verify the story to be true. I can only tell you what was told to me, although it was told to me by someone that I consider to be well-educated, mindful in his words, and trustworthy, as far as I know. The story sounds incredible. It sounds unbelievable. It sounds as though some drunken fool is bragging about his accomplishments with no consideration for exactly how much it comes off as a morbid fairy tale. The retelling of a man's mad tale. But, for some reason, I feel as though this man who came to me with this story is truthful in his retelling, and wouldn't have come to me if he himself doesn't believe it to be true. So, to the very best of my recollection and the limited amount of notes I took, due to the fact that I wasn't aware that I would be given such information, and even after I was being told the story, I wasn't sure if it was believable. You'll have to decide that for yourselves, just as I have to decide for myself. Come in closer. Clear your mind of everything else. Listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Before you dismiss this as fodder for the trash, or the fever dreams of an ill man, or even the result of mental illness, investigate for yourselves. Delve into history, ancient history. Put in some search words and see where they lead you, down the dark and evil path of possibility. See for yourselves the videos posted by self-proclaimed alchemists, and look at their creations, and then ask yourself, do you still believe this to be too fantastical to be true? Or is there some possibility that this story is not only true, but possibly the most frightening thing that you could ever imagine? First, I must explain that modern science is governed still by what the moral compass of society deems allowable. Modern scientists are strictly forbidden to quote-unquote play God. The cloning of an animal was met with outrage by the general public. The creation of life is not for humans to undertake. I don't mean the birthing of a child when I say the word creation. I mean creating a life through scientific means. Growing an ear on the back of a mouse for some is the shady work of the devil, and science is only allowed to slowly bring forth progress, lest it be knocked down as blasphemy. There was a time when in vitro fertilization was not seen as we see it now, which is commonplace, the words used in everyday conversation, but then it was debated and seen as frighteningly too close to playing God. To this day, there are people who will not conceive with using that method as it goes beyond their belief system. So, slowly, science has to walk that fine line between miraculous discovery and overstepping boundaries set by men and religion, and therefore can be met with outrage. However, in medieval times, the father of science was alchemy, which was sometimes viewed as magic and sorcery. Alchemists were not bound by such constructs as the general population's opinions of this thing or that. They did their work in secret. They shared their work only among other alchemists, and in their discoveries were occasionally things that should be best left to God. One of these things is the creation of the homunculus, the mixing of an animal's egg with human sperm or blood in the hopes of creating life, what we now call genetic engineering. A human life, in the belief that it was the human sperm which bore the greatest responsibility in the creation of life, more so than the human ovum. The word homunculus is Latin for little man. The thought that humans, alchemists, could create such little men is thought to date back to the early Middle Ages, between 400 and 1000 AD, although it shows up in writings around the 16th century. So, that is the background you need to know when you are listening to this story. The story of the man, my acquaintance, the story he came to tell me. According to the man, his acquaintance, whom he calls John, injected human sperm into a chicken's egg at the time that it was laid. Then, John put the egg into an incubator for 14 days, and on the 14th day, John placed the egg into a tank of saline solution, which was continually kept at the temperature of 99 degrees, just a tad bit higher than the average normal temperature for a human woman. On the 45th day, John very carefully put his hands into the solution, which was continually being recirculated, cleaned and filtered and brought back, and ever so gently opened the egg. The shell had become soft to the touch. It was no longer hard. It was almost flesh-like in its consistency, and in his hand he held what appeared to be an ever so tiny spinal cord, a lump of clear flesh, and inside that flesh, a beating heart. Then John began to add protein powder along with a vitamin mixture into the solution, and with disbelief he saw, over weeks, this flesh with a beating heart and a spinal cord begin to form into a being with tiny limbs, the beginning of a head shape forming, black dots where eyes would form, and attached to its back what could only be described as clear bone-type structures, one on each side of the spine. They appeared lace-like in their formation, intricate, barely perceivable, fine, and delicate wing-like formations. At the 30th week of observation, John arranged for the man to come view his creation. The man was taken aback by what he saw. Inside the container, a large fish tank-like container, was what could only be described as looking human, a small human male with wings attached to its back, covered in what appeared to be feathers. They were almost hair-like. The thing was 8 inches long from head to toe. The wings were close to 4 inches tall. The body of the thing covered in fine hair, but black hair was forming on its tiny head. John had attached wires to it, and its heartbeat was quick, quicker than he'd ever heard one before. John had the man come back every week thereafter, and on the 39th week, the thing's skin was no longer translucent. One could no longer see the blood running through its veins. The eyes had eyelashes, its mouth fully formed. It looked mostly human if it were not for the wings. Not chicken wings, though not unlike bird wings. However, these were sharp at the tips, skeletal-looking at the ends, yet still covered with feathers, which looked like thick hair, rough hair. And on that day, John took the thing from the container and placed it under the incubator, and the thing took a breath. John covered it with a blanket and fed it goat's milk through its mouth with a dropper, and the thing took the milk, its eyes opening. They were black as the night's sky, with long black eyelashes. The thing had small limbs with hands and feet, fingers and toes. John and the man slept with the thing in the incubator for the first night, but by morning something happened that brought the man to terrified tears as he began to tell me the story. The thing was standing upright, blood dripping from its mouth, John's parakeet missing from its perch, its yellow feathers drenched in blood lay at the feet of the thing. John gasped when this thing spoke. "What, hath you thought you'd bring forth a child from your ancient witchcraft?" It seemed to almost hiss these words with hate. My name is John, and you are amazing. I did it. I have created you. And the being shook its wings, flapping them violently. Then in disgust it spat, "You have not created me, human. You are not a god. You have not the power to create life, you childish, vile pile of useless flesh." And John was stunned, and the man said that he was stunned as well, and the air in the room became thick, so thick the man felt as though he could not even swallow the air. And the thing went on, "You have not created a being with a soul. You have used witchcraft to make yourself as God. You cannot bring nor breathe a life, a soul, into your creation. What you have created is of evil. I am without a conscience. Your death will matter not to me. I come from the darkest corner of your imagination, from a place you dare not go. I lurk in the dank background of the primal memory located at the base of your spinal cord. I am darkness. I am your deceiver. You think to yourself that you have created life? No!" And he raised his voice, and it boomed throughout the room. The man was crawling on his hands and knees to get to the door. His hands kept grasping at his throat in vain to help him allow oxygen to just seep in. "You will be damned to an eternity of emptiness and dark." "I am free now," the thing sang with the music of a bird. And as the man crawled out of the room, the door remained open, and he heard the sound of John begging for his life, and the screams in terror and utter, unrelenting pain. The man couldn't crawl any further. He dropped to his stomach, and just as he did, he felt the flapping of wings brush against his back as the thing flew free. That is his story. I am left to tell it. The man died shortly after telling it to me. He was surrounded by his family and friends, but just before his soul left his body, I am told that he let out a terrifying scream.